Hello, everybody, and thanks for tuning in to our latest The Left Chapter Audio Dispatch. I'm Michael Laxer, and obviously, we live in difficult and trying times. Many people are having to stay at home from work or from school, or are having to work from home. Many of us all of us have seen a dramatic change in the way we go about things, the way we go about shopping, entertainment. There are no live sports, and this is very difficult on people. And in the shadow of this, of course, we know that these changes were put in place and are happening to prevent people from becoming ill and to prevent people from dying. They act as staying at home and working from home, and the other things that we're doing, and the sacrifices that we're making act as a kind of form of social solidarity. And the social solidarity does, on the whole, appear to be working. But it may not be working quite as much as some politicians would like us to believe. We're seeing a very serious push from the business community and from the political class to start to reopen parts of the economy and to start to reopen retail, as well as service enterprises. And meanwhile, if you read articles in the Toronto Star, for example, will tell you that far from having completely flattened the curve, deaths, in fact, are spiking right now in Ontario. We're seeing, according to health units across Ontario, there were 311 new cases and 51 deaths in Toronto on Sunday and Monday, which was the second highest of any 48-hour period after the 61 total deaths that were reported on Wednesday and Thursday last week. The 161 deaths that were reported across Ontario for Sunday and Monday were by far the most the province has seen in any 48-hour period since the beginning of the pandemic. That's all quoted out of a report that was in the Toronto Star, yesterday. This isn't past news. This is a problem right now. So you have to sort of wonder if these calls are somewhat premature. In the United States, where the push is really extreme to reopen the economy, there is a bit of a misleading aspect to the politicians saying that numbers appear to be flattening. Because if you, according to the New York Times, again in a piece that was released just today, this isn't something that came out 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, in a piece in the New York Times showed that if you take out the places where the coronavirus outbreak occurred earliest and in the most severe way at the beginning, places like New York City, New Orleans, and Detroit, what you find is that the curve is not really flattening at all. In fact, cases continue to increase, deaths continue to increase, and as a result, it's quite misleading when you have politicians saying that the situation now has changed sufficiently that it's probably quote unquote safe or okay to begin to reopen sectors of the economy in the way that they want to. Reopening, having people working together and having workers close together, within factories, within retail enterprises, in contact with the public, carries inherent and deep dangers during such a pandemic and such an outbreak as we're living in and living under right now. We see today that a COVID outbreak was declared at the Saputo Saskatoon milk factory. We know, of course, about the horrible situation at the Cargill the Cargill meat processing plant in Alberta, where 949 workers have tested positive for COVID-19. This and the plant has reopened. The plant is reopened despite this. And to me, it's absolutely shocking. Cargill. It's also worth noting that according to the Canadians for Tax Fairness, Cargill Limited it channels most of the profits from its Canadian operations to its American billionaire owners through holding companies based in the tax haven of Luxembourg. So Cargill is not only the largest food company in the world, the organization says, it is also the largest privately held company in the world. That they actually work through this, like these tax havens. This is the company that the big push to reopen in Alberta. Now there are protests, of course, against this, and quite rightfully so. But the plant's operating, in spite of the fact that it's certainly not. It would not seem to be for the benefit of the workers that it's operating. In the United States, of course, you have this large swaths of the American political class, a right-wing political class, really, really pushing to see things reopen as quickly as possible. Chris Christie, the former New Jersey governor, he said that people are going to have to accept more deaths to reopen the economy. It's a pretty shocking thing to say. But why are they going to have to accept this? It's pretty easy for him to say that. I assume he's not intending to go do a few shifts working on the front lines of anything. So I think in his mind, the people who are going to have to accept dying aren't people like him or, people that he knows. He's certainly not alone in saying these things. You have, in Texas where they've been pushing ahead with reopening against the advice of many medical professionals and health officials. The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, actually admitted, quote, that every scientific and medical report shows state reopenings ipso facto lead to an increase in novel coronavirus cases. He just outright admits in this private call that people are going to get sick if they reopen the state, and yet they're pushing ahead with doing it. And not only are they pushing ahead with doing it, you see the way that big business and business people operate, always putting their own interests ahead of those of workers. In a report that, this group of Texas Restaurant Corporation, restaurant company, the Hillstone Restaurant Group, partially reopened some of its restaurants and told its workers that, if they wanted to wear masks to work, they didn't need to come in. They weren't going to be given shifts because apparently the company feels that masks are incompatible with the image they want to project to customers. But masks are not incompatible with the health of workers. But they don't care about that. It seems that some sort of weird image comes ahead of the health and safety of the people they have serving. And that tells you. It tells you pretty much everything you need to know about their attitude towards their employees. In the United States as well, there have been all sorts of outbreaks in factories. Another example being that more than 700 employees at a Tyson's Food Meat Factory in Perry, Iowa, for example, tested positive for the coronavirus. And in spite of this, Tyson Foods has been pushing very hard to continue to operate, and they've been doing it by, John Tyson, who was the chairman of Tyson Foods, put out a lot of fairly alarmist stuff about how the food supply chain was breaking down across the United States as a way of putting pressure, no doubt, on politicians and health officials to allow their enterprises to continue to operate full steam ahead, despite outbreaks such as the one that was reported on in Iowa today. This is, it's very telling that they want to push. The corporations and the corporate politicians want to push ahead in spite of the very clear dangers that are posed with reopening parts of the economy. They really are putting the interests of business and of capital directly ahead of your interests, the interests of workers and the interests of working people. Let's say it again. Deaths are not down. They're not down in the United States. They don't appear to be down in Ontario. So when the politicians and folks are talking about reopening, they're talking about reopening in a way that directly threatens the health of workers, especially women workers, especially racialized workers and marginalized workers, because those types of workers are massively overrepresented in the service sector and in the sectors of the economy that they are pushing to have reopened. Reopening is all about business, and it's all about the well-to-do, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the interests of working people or their health. Nothing. Reopening will kill people, and it'll kill a lot of people, and it will be overrepresented in the groups we mentioned before, and that's simply wrong. So I think it's very important for people to remember that it's absolutely these these are difficult times, and it's not pleasant, and it's not fun to have to stay at home. It's not nice that you can't go for chicken wings and beer. It's unfortunate that you can't get a haircut right now, but is it really worth doing on the backs and over the dead bodies of working people? I don't think it is, and I'd like to think our sense of social solidarity is greater than that, and I think we need to stand up and fight back against any attempts to prematurely reopen the economy and prematurely reopen businesses in a way that will lead to the deaths of some of our most marginalized and vulnerable workers in the economy.